Tonight, breaking news, the Omicron variant spreading in the U.S. The new cases just confirmed, including one man who traveled to New York City and attended a convention with thousands of people. President Biden announcing new steps to combat the virus, including expanded travel restrictions you need to know about. And the virus hunter who discovered the first U.S. Omicron case joins Top Story tonight live. What he's saying about this mutation, plus the stock market roller coaster as more infections emerge. Also breaking tonight, fake vax card. Antonio Brown suspended for 3 games for violating COVID-19 protocols after the league says he did lie about his vaccination status. Brown and the Buccaneers head coach just 2 weeks ago had strongly denied allegations the wide receiver had a fake vaccine card. BLM protesters struck. The new video showing the moment a car drove through demonstrators in Times Square last year. Why the driver is now refusing to take a plea deal. China versus the Women's Tennis Association, the communist superpower, hitting back after the WTA boldly suspended all tournaments in the country and Hong Kong over concerns for a tennis star who accused a top Chinese official of sexual assault. Selling rainforest oil, our in-depth report from Ecuador, where oil companies are carving up the Amazon rainforest for oil that is then sold to a U.S. state. The Latin American nation trying to pay back more than $18 billion to China. The indigenous families caught in the middle. And collision course, the moment a state trooper flipped over a highway barrier to avoid an incoming car. Top Story starts right now. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story tonight with breaking news. The Omicron variant has now been confirmed in at least 4 states. The new infections found in Colorado, Minnesota, and New York. Today, President Biden rolling out his plan to combat the variant, saying the country will ramp up existing COVID-19 procedures, and beginning next month, insurance companies will reimburse Americans for at-home COVID tests. The president also announcing all international travelers will be required to test negative 24 hours before entering the U.S., despite vaccination status. He also confirmed a federal mask mandate on all public transportation will remain in effect until mid-March. And the doctor who discovered the first U.S. Omicron case joins Top Story live tonight to talk about the mutation. We'll get to that in just a few minutes, but we want to start tonight with NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, who leads us off.
Tonight, expected, but still unnerving. More cases of the Omicron variant detected inside the U.S. New York officials calling a news conference this evening to announce Omicron is there. Add Colorado to California and Minnesota. Today, officials identified Omicron in a Denver area woman who returned after a tour in southern Africa. She was fully vaccinated but had not received a booster.
She is experiencing mild symptoms and is isolating at home.
Today in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz tried to offer reassurance.
It's not surprising that it showed up.
That case involves a Minneapolis area man, vaccinated and boosted, who had traveled to New York City, where he attended an anime convention last month, held at the Javits Center, the very place that had once served as a COVID field hospital. Convention goers urged to get tested. New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
We do anticipate there'll be more cases, but to the extent that they are mild, we'll address them. This is not cause for alarm.
From the president today, a visit to the National Institutes of Health to reboot his plan for winter COVID.
We're going to fight this variant with science and speed, not chaos and confusion.
One new benefit, the costs of in-home COVID tests will be reimbursable through your private health insurance, expected to begin in late January. Plus, 50 million free tests will be distributed to community sites and rural areas. A change in travel requirements. All passengers flying to the U.S. from foreign countries must have a negative COVID test within 24 hours, down from 3 days. Establishing new family vaccination clinics so children, adults, and seniors can get their shots together. A milestone today. The White House says nearly 2.2 million doses went into arms, including more than 1 million booster shots, the largest 24-hour total in more than 6 months. As science learns more about the risks of the Omicron variant, doctors warn the winter season is already a dangerous time.
I'm very worried. We're very much in the thick of this. We haven't gotten done with the Delta surge. We're going to lose 10,000 Americans week over week, well into the early spring.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell joins us now live from the White House. Kelly, a lot to talk about here, especially on the travel requirements. I know you have some reporting about domestic travel, but I want to go back to that international travel restriction. Was the White House asked, have they even considered how difficult it may be for Americans to get a test in a foreign country where they get the results back in 24 hours? I can tell you from personal experience, that's tough to do sometimes, even in New York City.
It is a challenge, but it is something that is a burden on the travelers. So what this will do is require travelers who would have had to do that within a 3-day period to now get that test result back within 24 hours of their travel time. And the new information from the White House is this goes effect beginning this Monday, December 6th, just after 12:01 a.m. So this does include both the PCR test, which sometimes takes a longer period, and the more rapid test that can be done. I was traveling with the president in Scotland recently and was able to get one at the airport itself, and the results came back quickly. So people will have to do a little homework if they're traveling to get this done. This is a new test to try to make certain people boarding planes and coming into the U.S. Have a tighter window for knowing what their vaccine status is. So this is the same requirement with a narrowed window for trying to make certain that both U.S. citizens and visitors, whether they are, everyone has to be vaccinated, first of all, to come into the United States, except for American citizens who can be tested. This is just a way to tighten things up. And on domestic travel, Tom, they're saying they're not making any new requirements regarding testing or vaccines, but as you mentioned, the mask requirement will stay through the winter months through March 18th at this point.
All right, Kelly O at the White House with that breaking news for us tonight. Kelly, we thank you for that. For more now on the Omicron variant, Dr. Charles Chu joins us now. His team at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center identified the first known infection in the United States of the Omicron variant. So, Dr. Chu, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I got to ask you, what was that moment like within 5 hours of getting this, positive test for COVID? You guys realized you had the Omicron variant in front of you?
Yeah, I had a mixed reaction. I, like others, I had expected that it was only a matter of time that we would detect the Omicron variant. And it was rather, I was surprised, however, both excited and surprised in that it was unexpected that we would detect it in San Francisco. I had actually thought that other metropolitan areas may have been more likely to identify it first.
For all of the viewers, including myself who are listening to you now, what's it like? I mean, you see those 50 mutations we've heard about, 30 mutations just on the spike proteins. What does that look like in front of the computer, under the microscope? I have no idea.
So what we can do is we sequence the virus, and we can actually look. It's actually quite remarkable the number of mutations. In particular, the number of mutations on the spike protein. Having 32 mutations is a very unusually large number of mutations, and so this is why there's so much concern over Omicron because it has mutations that in other variants have been shown to make the virus more infectious or make the virus more able to decrease the immune protection that you may get from vaccination. So this is why it's absolutely essential for us to answer these questions. And now that we have identified cases, we can now do the laboratory studies that would be needed to answer those questions.
I got to ask you, when you first saw that, did it stun you? Did it sort of stop you in your place?
Well, I would say it was definitely something that was remarkable, actually looking at the genome and seeing the sheer number of mutations in the genome. On average, even for the variant genomes, there are, for instance, there may be anywhere from 10 to 15 mutations. This is a viral genome that has more than 50.
You've been able to isolate this, you've been able to study this and look at this. What can you tell our viewers who are so concerned and confused about Omicron?
Yeah, I think that there are still many questions that we don't know about Omicron. And part of the reason why it's taken so long, or by so long, I mean, days to weeks, part of the reason is that up until now, we really haven't had a clinical sample. The advantage of now identifying cases in the United States, what we can do then is we can then grow the virus. And if we're able to grow the virus, we can do those laboratory studies to answer the really important questions. Is this virus more infectious? Does this virus impact the protection that you may get from vaccination? Does it cause more severe disease? And so I would surely expect that as cases continue to be identified in the United States, that there will be equally important efforts to answer these questions in the laboratory.
Since you discovered the first case, I do want to ask you, and this will be my last question for you tonight, how long will we get those answers? How long will it take to get those answers?
So usually it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to be able to grow the virus and generate a stock amount of the virus that you can then share with different laboratories across the country. And from there, probably a few more weeks. So I would hope that within 4 to 6 weeks that we'll have at least some answers to these questions that everyone has.
So right around Christmas time. All right, Dr.
Yes.
Chu, we thank you and your team for your work, and we appreciate your time. We're also following some breaking news tonight from Capitol Hill. Congress scrambling to avoid a shutdown before tomorrow's deadline. Moments ago, the House voting to fund the government through February. But some Republican senators threatening to derail the deal over President Biden's vaccine mandate. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake tonight with the late details.
Tonight, Congress lurching towards a government shutdown the leaders of both parties now scrambling to avoid.
First of all, they'd shut down government, and then they'd shut down science.
It will only create chaos and uncertainty.
Federal government funding runs out Friday at midnight. Congressional leaders have a deal in place to extend it until mid-February. But a small group of Senate Republicans say they'll derail that deal unless they get a vote on defunding President Biden's vaccine and testing mandate for businesses, currently blocked by federal courts.
I don't want to shut down the government. The only thing I want to shut down is Congress funding enforcement of an immoral, unconstitutional vaccine mandate.
I'll be doggone if I'm going to get rolled on this right now without a fight.
The group's stalling strategy frustrating their fellow Republican lawmakers who have slammed the plan as highly unlikely to work.
Ultimately, we're going to fund the government, and I don't see this hostage as one that we should take.
But leaving President Biden unbothered.
There is a plan in place unless somebody decides to be totally erratic, and I don't think that will happen. So I don't think we'll be safe. Thank you.
All right, Garrett joins us now live from Capitol Hill. Garrett, there's been a lot of late developments tonight, so walk our viewers through what happens now after the House voting just moments ago.
Yeah, Tom, the House vote to send this over to the Senate seems to have broken some things through. So, too, the fact that this is Congress's Friday, and some members are eager to leave town, and, in fact, some already have. It seems the fact that Republicans won't be able to muster 50 votes in favor of this amendment, even if they get that vote, has led Democrats to say, all right, go ahead, fine, you can have that vote. It'll lose. We'll fund the government and go home. So it looks possible, in fact, maybe even likely, that the Senate will be able to vote on this tonight, averting a shutdown by more than a day. That's pretty far ahead of the deadline when Congress is concerned.
Definitely. Garrett Haake with those fast-moving developments from Capitol Hill. Garrett, thank you. Next to the gripping testimony in the Gelane Maxwell trial, Jeffrey Epstein's former house manager testifying the two entertained hundreds of young women, some underage, at Epstein's Florida mansion. The employee telling the courtroom Maxwell was intimately involved in the household's day-to-day and even slept in Epstein's bedroom. Stephanie Gosk reports.
In court today, a behind-the-scenes look at life in Jeffrey Epstein's sprawling Palm Beach mansion. Juan Alessi was the house manager for more than a decade. He told the jury Gelane Maxwell was the lady of the house and slept in Epstein's bedroom. Hundreds of women passed through the home while he worked there, most of them in their 20s, he said. While at the pool, Alessi testified at least 75% were topless. The women interacted with both Epstein and Maxwell, and some were underage girls.
It appears that these underage victims, according to the testimony, would always show up Miss Maxwell's office when they were presented at the house. And from there, the house manager says he didn't see what happens next.
Maxwell faces 6 counts of sex trafficking. The prosecution alleges she lured teenage girls for Epstein to abuse, while the defense argues in part that she was just an employee and a victim of Epstein's manipulation. Earlier this week, the first of Maxwell's accusers, using the pseudonym Jane, described how Maxwell and Epstein befriended her when she was 14 at an arts camp in Michigan, where Epstein was a donor. Jane told the jury Maxwell acted like a big sister but was grooming her for Epstein, graphically describing how she trained her to massage and sexually satisfy him.
When this alleged victim, Jane, described her first sexual interaction with Jeffrey Epstein and how that made her feel, that we saw Gelane Maxwell breathing heavily at the defense table.
Jane painted a picture of the lavish lifestyle Maxwell and Epstein used to ensnare her, testifying that Epstein invited her on his private plane, gave her money when her family struggled financially, and introduced her to powerful men, including Donald Trump. In her testimony, she didn't say anything inappropriate happened with the former president. The defense attempted to highlight discrepancies in dates and facts. Jane told investigators Epstein took her to The Lion King in 1994, but the show didn't open until 3 years later. She also, according to the defense, told investigators she wasn't sure if Maxwell was ever in the room when the abuse occurred. In court on Monday, Jane testified Maxwell was often there and sometimes took part in the abuse. The defense tried to portray her as interested only in Epstein's money, but in an emotional end to her testimony, Jane said she wished she never received $5 million from the Victims Fund, adding, "Hopefully this just puts it to an end and I can move on with my life."
Stephanie joins us now on set. Stephanie, what a day of testimony, right? And we saw that there in your story. The house manager had some pretty big recollections about what went down in that Epstein house.
Yeah, you know, Tom, think about it. This is a case about the sex trafficking of minors. Gelane Maxwell is not accused of abuse. She's accused of sex trafficking. So what does the prosecution have to do? They have to establish that there was a minor involved. Well, this house manager says he met Jane at the age of 14, 1994. That's when he met her at the Palm Beach house. He goes on to say that he would often pick Jane up at her home because she lived in the Palm Beach area and bring her to the house. And on at least one occasion, he picked her up, according to him, with luggage and took her, Epstein, Gelane Maxwell, the family dog, and other guests to the airport.
Puts them all together. Prosecution had him on the stand today. Tomorrow the defense gets their chance.
That's exactly right. They have not cross-examined him yet.
All right. All right, Stephanie, thank you for that. Now to the latest in the trial of disgraced actor Jussie Smollett. The 2 men he allegedly paid to attack him taking the stand today, detailing the disturbing things they say Smollett told them to do. Maura Barrett has the latest tonight.
Tonight, new testimony from key witnesses in the Jussie Smollett trial. The 2 brothers Smallett allegedly paid to attack him, detailing the actor's instructions to, quote, fake beat him up. The brothers also saying it was never part of the plan for Smallett to go to police.
Jussie Smollett says that attack happened just a short distance from here. Today, police don't have any suspects.
The allegations as described to us are horrendous, horrible, and quite frankly, cowardly. Now, having said that, he is a victim, and we treat him like a victim.
Abimbola Osundero, an aspiring actor who also worked on the show Empire, told the jury that Smollett, who is black and gay, instructed him and his brother to shout racist and homophobic slurs and yell, "This is MAGA country," and to punch him in the face, but, quote, not too hard. They also testified Smollett told them to throw bleach on him and to put a noose around his neck. Smollett, seen here in body cam video from that night, still wearing the noose when police arrived. When news of the reported hate crime broke the next morning, Osundero texted Smollett, quote, "Bruh, say it ain't true. I'm praying for speedy recovery." Then he says he received a check from Smollett for $3,500. While Smollett originally told police the attackers were white,
it felt like minutes, but it probably was like 30 seconds.
He's otherwise always stood by his story that the attack was real, seen here in an emotional 2019 interview with Good Morning America.
I respect too much the people who I am now one of those people who have been attacked in any way. You do such a disservice when you lie about things like this.
The The defense today working to discredit the brothers, asking Abimbola if he was Smallett's drug dealer. The defense went on to ask him if he had a sexual relationship with Smallett and if he used, quote, sexual tension to get career help. The brother saying he did not recall a relationship.
As court is still in session tonight, Tom, the special prosecutors have rested their case, the defense calling their first witness. This trial now expected to last into next week, but we still don't know if Smallett himself plans to testify. Tom?
And going late tonight. All right, Maura, we thank you for all that reporting. We turn now to immigration. The number of undocumented immigrants in the U.S. detention centers has increased by more than 50% since President Biden took office. But now the Biden administration is set to reinstate a controversial Trump-era policy which forces migrants seeking asylum to remain in Mexico. NBC's Guad Venegas has the details.
Tonight, despite campaigning against his predecessor's immigration stance, President Joe Biden will reinstate a controversial policy. Migrants arriving at the U.S. land border seeking asylum will have to remain in Mexico once again. This was Biden in a debate during the campaign.
This is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
He also called the policy inhumane due to violence migrants faced when they waited in Mexico. Now, Biden did end the policy soon after taking office, but now his administration is set to implement the rule once again after losing a battle in federal appeals court and the Supreme Court.
We want to end this program, but we also believe in following the law, and that's exactly what we're doing.
The rule, formerly known as the Migrant Protection Protocol, requires migrants seeking asylum to remain in Mexico during the legal process, allowing only limited entry for court proceedings. The program is set to restart Monday at one border city, and it's expected to eventually include 7 border crossings from coast to coast along the Mexican border. The change will include, quote, certain humanitarian improvements, according to the Department of Homeland Security.
Nos encontramos en una situación vulnerable, pasamos peligro.
According to the nonprofit Human Rights First, the organization tracked more than 1,500 cases of migrants kidnapped or attacked while under the Remain in Mexico program during the Trump administration. Today, the news coming just weeks after Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador visited Washington to meet with President Biden.
Well, welcome.
Today, the Mexican government releasing a statement accepting the policy, saying, quote, the United States has accepted concerns regarding a need for more resources available to shelters and aid organizations. In addition, it states vaccines will be made available to the migrants returned to Mexico. Mexican officials also say the U.S. is taking local security concerns into consideration, yet it doesn't specify what actions could be taken.
All right, Guad Venegas joins us now from Los Angeles live tonight. And Guad, although the Biden administration is implementing the rule, they do say they still want to get rid of the program eventually?
Right. So President Biden promised to end this practice during the campaign. Now the administration says they're going to follow the court's order, but continue to pursue the legal path to effectively end the practice at the border. We should also note that under the change they've implemented, they're going to assign more resources to the immigration system to make sure that the asylum seekers under this Remain in Mexico program get through the process in less than 6 months. Tom.
All right, Guad Venegas for us. Guad, we thank you for that. We also have breaking news from the sports world tonight. Buccaneers wide receiver Antonio Brown has been suspended for 3 games after the league says he misrepresented his vaccination status. But it comes just weeks after he adamantly denied allegations that he was using a fake vaccine card. Sam Brock has more.
Tonight, Antonio Brown suspended by the NFL. It comes after a back-and-forth finger-pointing battle between the star NFL wide receiver and his former chef and employee who accused Brown of faking his COVID-19 vaccination card. The final word belonging to the NFL, which just handed down the 3-game suspension to Brown and 2 teammates after investigating whether the athletes, quote, misrepresented their vaccination status. None of the players are appealing the suspension, which will cost Brown about $1 million. At first, his attorney vehemently denying the accusations of a fake card.
The NFL and the NFL Players Association now have drawn a line in the sand. If you use a fake vaccination card, you are suspended 3 games, no questions asked.
The punishment coming after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers initially said they'd received vaccination cards from all players and that no irregularities were observed. Even head coach Bruce Arians was confident the accusations were false weeks ago.
That he's produced a fake vaccine card?
None whatsoever. We did our due diligence. The league will do theirs.
Tonight, the Bucs issuing a new statement. We appreciate the league's timely handling of this matter and recognize the importance of the health and safety protocols that have been established. We will continue to implement all league COVID-19 protocols. The latest COVID twist on the gridiron, coming amidst a possible crisis of trust. The NFL says 93% of its players have been vaccinated, but given these findings, questions may now arise about whether others are skirting the rules.
I don't think it's entirely widespread. I wouldn't be surprised if 5 to 10% of NFL players had done this, but the risk is pretty heavy.
Aaron Rodgers, the league's reigning MVP, was recently fined more than $14,000 for violating COVID-19 protocols, but did petition the league for a vaccine exemption and did notify his team, although Rodgers also misled the public.
Are you vaccinated, and what's your stance on vaccinations?
Yeah, I've been immunized.
Tonight, Brown found guilty by the NFL for not being forthright about safeguarding against a virus that continues to impact player health and safety. For Top Story, Sam Brock, NBC News.
All right, we thank Sam for staying on top of that story for us. Still ahead tonight, prison break. Gang members in Mexico using a truck and car bombs to free inmates who they were trying to bust out. Plus, close call, the trooper flying over a highway median to avoid an oncoming truck would cause the chain reaction crash. And the woman who drove through a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters refusing to agree to a sentencing recommendation. Vaughn Hilliard is here. He joins Top Story with more on that case as it heads to court and why the victims are frustrated. Stay with us. Top Story, just getting started. Back now with the woman who drove through a Black Lives Matter protest last December. She's now heading to trial after rejecting a sentencing recommendation from the New York District Attorney's Office. The incident seriously injuring several people, and some of the victims are upset with how this case is going. Here's NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard.
A major case in New York is now slated to head to the courtroom. A woman who prosecutors say drove through a protest in Manhattan last year, injuring multiple near the scene. She is now rejecting a sentencing offer. NYPD arrested Kathleen Casillo at that intersection last December, seen here being taken away by police.
From 1 second to the next, I was up in the air. Like, I didn't hear anybody coming. I didn't hear the screams. I didn't hear anything. I just was walking and then I was flying.
Her case now putting more focus on the dangerous scenes in recent years at protests on America's streets. This is the site where last year Casillo hit the accelerator on her car, crashing through the intersection, injuring multiple individuals and sending them to the hospital.
My right tibia was broken by Kathleen hitting me with her car. So I broke my leg. I was recovering for months. You know, I couldn't sleep for months because the pain in my leg would wake me up. So for 2 months straight, no matter what I did, I couldn't go to sleep. It was absolutely torture.
The protest? A march to back those in ICE's detention on a hunger strike at New Jersey's Bergen County Jail. But this is where the case is now complicated. Casillo is pleading not guilty, but others like Rodriguez say the charges aren't enough. On Wednesday in court, New York Assistant District Attorney Andrew Mercer offered her a sentencing recommendation. That offer? 6 days of community service and 1 year of a suspended driver's license for pleading guilty. But Casillo, she rejected the offer. Instead, her defense lawyer saying they will continue to discuss potential options with the district attorney's office before her January trial.
My overall takeaway is that we are still seeking accountability and acknowledgement for what happened. And after yesterday, it feels very much that she is being protected.
I'm extremely frustrated, and I'm also angry that I have to do this right now because I'm still recovering from this attack. I shouldn't be having to advocate for myself. I should have people to advocate for me.
Casillo's lawyer telling NBC News, quote, "Not all accidents are crimes." Did she need to accelerate like that?
It's never okay to have a group of people swarm a vehicle, creating a dangerous situation for the protesters. There has to be some responsibility on their part as well. This was a fight or flight response. She feared for her safety, for her life, for that of her daughter, and she accelerated. And unfortunately, people were hurt. It's most disturbing and unfortunate And those individuals, Ms. Cassillo's heart goes out to them.
Multiple state legislatures this year worked to advance legislation to protect individuals claiming self-defense at protests. The state of Oklahoma passing a law that protects drivers who unintentionally injure or kill people participating in riots. It also makes it a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in prison to obstruct a roadway or impede vehicular traffic. Florida passed a similar law earlier this year that gave drivers who hit protesters civil liability protection. But a federal judge blocked the legislation, saying it was overly broad and could be used to criminalize free speech.
All right, Vaughn joins us now live on set. So, Vaughn, we saw all the angles of that video there. You spoke to pretty much everyone involved in this case. So I'm curious, she didn't take the plea deal. She wants basically no punishment, and everyone else is saying that plea deal was too soft to begin with.
What we're looking at here is essentially two charges against her. One, assault in the third degree. Two, reckless endangerment in the second degree. What the DA offered her was essentially accept those charges here, and we'll give you those punishment of a couple days of community service. What they did not offer was an actual plea deal, which would have lessened the charges, essentially brought them down. She is saying that she is still not guilty, and that is what they intend to argue in court on January 28th. Now, what you heard from those individuals, including that gentleman who had his leg broken, flew through the air there, said they want more serious charges from the district attorney's office. And the district attorney's office tonight told me that they did not file felony charges because that would constitute the establishment of serious physical injury, which they said that they have not been able to document at this time.
All right, Vaughn, great reporting on that. Also, we can get you a notepad, so you don't need just the Post-it note next time. Vaughn Hilliard for us, thanks so much. A story out of Mexico. The American woman found dead in her Cancun hotel room. Her boyfriend now facing homicide charges. The chilling new details from her family. And inside Ecuador, where companies are carving up the Amazon rainforest, and that oil is being sold right here in the U.S. Our investigation coming up next. All right, back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with the American woman who was allegedly killed by her boyfriend while on vacation. Authorities say 26-year-old Sativa Transu from Washington State was found dead in her hotel room in Cancun. A local newspaper reporting her 31-year-old boyfriend was arrested on homicide charges. The victim's family says he physically assaulted her just days before. They are now trying to bring her body back to the U.S. We also have an update on that deadly high school shooting in Michigan we've been covering all week. Authorities revealing two teachers separately reported concerning behavior from the suspect the day before the shooting that left 4 students dead and 8 other people injured. The school holding a meeting with the 15-year-old and his parents just hours before the incident. Also tonight, we're learning one of the victims, 16-year-old Tate Meyer, died while trying to disarm the gunman. An online petition has been launched to name the school's football stadium after him. He played football for that school. And a close call for a state trooper in Idaho. Take a look at this, a dash cam capturing the moment a truck came barreling towards the trooper, forcing him to flip over a concrete barrier. The trooper was helping a driver with a flat tire. Authorities say the truck was slowly passing them when it was struck by another vehicle, causing a chain reaction crash. The trooper was taken to the hospital, but he's going to be okay. All right, turning back now to our top story tonight. As more states confirm cases of the Omicron variant, the stock market still bounced back pretty strongly today, rising more than 600 points. So is Wall Street shrugging off concerns of the new variant, and what should you be doing with your investments? CNBC reporter Christina Partsinevelos joins us now. So, Christina, the first question to you, for our viewers who are not experts like you or the team at CNBC, what's going on with the market right now?
Well, I know we see the markets, the Dow closing 600 points higher, and I know this sounds insensitive, but when it comes to markets, some investors seem to think it's so bad, it's good. In other words, stocks have sold off so much over the past few days that now is the time to pick up some of those few cheaper companies ahead of what we call the Santa rally. And so that's when markets tend to do really a little bit better in the last few weeks of December because people are buying goods and services, they're shopping, traders are taking vacation, there's less action on the markets. markets, tax deadlines, bonuses are being invested. And so that adds to a lot of the volatility that we've just seen over the last little while. And then there's one more thing. It's not just all about the variant. There are concerns about future interest rate hikes as well as the reaction from the Federal Reserve to rising inflation. So it may not be a temporary problem anymore. So you've got the variant, inflation, and future rate hikes that are all adding to this volatility.
Is there a segment of the market, too, that possibly thinks the Omicron, this all may be a head fake and maybe there was too much hype? It may not be as bad as some people think?
Oh, the travel stocks, travel sector. Excellent question, because that sector actually closed much higher today. So maybe we thought it was a little bit worse than it really is, and that the shots are effective against the variant. So many travel companies stand to benefit from that, because maybe we're not going to be as fearful getting on those planes and booking those trips and booking those hotels. So that sector did do well.
Finally, Christina, what can we tell our viewers on weeks like this where there's a lot of sort of whiplash? What should regular investors do, especially with their 401ks?
Well, usually it's best to seek help from somebody that's an expert, right? So that would be the first bit of advice. The second bit of advice is to obviously have a diversified portfolio. Some say now add cryptocurrency to the mix, but it depends on who you're talking to. But overall, it's staying diversified, understanding the difference between growth and value. There's a lot of tricks here and there, but usually it's best, maybe if you are a beginner, stick with ETFs, exchange-traded funds that are baskets of the derivatives of some commodities that are a little bit less volatile than what we're seeing on the markets today and over the past few days.
All right, Christina, we thank you for that. Now to Top Stories Global Watch, and we begin with a violent prison break in Mexico. Surveillance video shows a truck with armor plating ramming through the prison gates. 9 inmates later seen running out. Authorities say the suspected gang member also fired at guards and set off several car bombs. One of the escapees is the leader of a local gang. And a newly discovered skeleton may offer new clues into ancient Rome. Archaeologists say the man, likely in his 40s, died in the Mount Vesuvius eruption 2,000 years ago. The skeleton was discovered in October, the first human remains found there in decades. Experts say the discovery and new technology are leading to new information on the eruption and also the 100 years leading up to it. Next to the Americas, where we take a look at stories coming from across Latin America and the U.S. Tonight, in partnership with the Pulitzer Center's Rainforest Investigations Network, we bring you an NBC News exclusive, a new report out today by Amazon Watch and Stand.Earth, revealing one of the world's most important and diverse tropical rainforests being ravaged, all to satisfy the world's demand for oil. And one of the biggest consumers is here in the U.S. Our investigation begins deep in Ecuador's rainforest.
Deep inside the Ecuadorian rainforest, Yasuní National Park is home to some of the greatest biodiversity on the planet, a spectacular habitat teeming with rare plants and wildlife. The rivers that flow through here help feed and sustain the entire Amazon. But this land is in danger because underneath this spectacular area lies another kind of treasure, oil. More than 1 billion barrels of it.
It hurts me to see how little is left of our rainforest inside this protected area.
Nemo Giquita is a leader of the indigenous Guarani people who live inside this rainforest. For them, the land and the water are sacred. Now, Giquita says she is fighting to save her home.
We Guarani are fighting to protect our land and our rivers because the rainforest for us is home. It's our life, our pharmacy, our everything.
Giquita is trying to block the oil companies from expanding and moving even deeper inside the rainforest. But oil is big business here.
This pipeline leads directly into the Yasuní National Park. This noise is constant, 365 days a year. For us, the sounds of the rainforest and wildlife are music, representing peace and harmony. The oil companies that come to our land to destroy it bring with them so much noise that is not native to the rainforest. These oil and mineral companies are destroying our land, and they leave only contamination, sickness, and death.
Just 7 years ago, this was pristine rainforest. But now you can see the large footprint carved into the ground by the oil companies. For its size, Ecuador has the highest rate of deforestation in the Western Hemisphere.
The roads for us represent harm. With the roads come strangers and contamination. Our communities were not informed beforehand nor consulted.
Pedro Bermeo, activist and spokesperson for Yas Unidos, an international group created to protect this park, tells us videotaping these oil sites is not allowed.
This area is completely militarized. We are not allowed access, but we do know from satellite images that several kilometers of road have been built during the pandemic. Our group has had a very complicated relationship with the government. They have followed us and treated us like terrorists. I have received threats. I've been followed by intelligence agents. It is very dangerous to be an activist in this country.
Despite the threats, Pedro's group continues to fight alongside the indigenous communities to keep Yasuni's oil underground.
Oil extraction means contamination. There is no way to separate the two. They are getting closer and closer to the deepest parts of the rainforest.
But Ecuador's president is actually the one expanding the drilling, vowing to double oil production and open up more sections of this rainforest for oil and mineral exploration.
La institucionalidad actual.
Oil revenues are key for the government of Ecuador, which is deeply in debt to China, a whopping $18.4 billion as of last year, the third highest debt in Latin America behind two far bigger nations, Brazil and Venezuela.
The goal for Ecuador is to extract oil at any cost. The irony is that the money isn't even staying in Ecuador. The companies who profit are the Chinese oil companies. They are the ones making the money here.
The money may be going to help pay off Ecuador's debt to China, but according to a new report by Amazon Watch and Stand.Earth, in 2020, nearly two-thirds of oil from the Amazon went to the United States, and the vast majority of that to one state in particular.
California, is the #1 global consumer of Amazon oil.
We sat down with the authors of the report. Angeline Robertson is a senior researcher with Stand.Earth. She's been tracking the oil supply chain for 3 years and found that 1 in every 7 tanks of gas or diesel pumped in Southern California originates from the Amazon.
Costco has a major market in California, and their stores have fueling stations where they sell gasoline and diesel. We can also calculate the volume of diesel that they consume when they're shipping their products around the state. Costco is actually high on the list because they consume Amazon oil in both those regards.
According to the report, LAX is the biggest consumer of jet fuel derived from the Amazon, roughly 1 billion gallons consumed annually. 1 in every 6 gallons of jet fuel used for planes at LAX is from the Amazon.
We looked at the total consumption of jet fuel at LAX. You see Delta and American Airlines, some of the bigger airlines in the United States coming up in the top.
What can be done to mitigate this?
We know that we need to begin to keep fossil fuels in the ground. Right?
Kevin Koning is the Climate and Energy Director for Amazon Watch.
The latest science is telling us that we can't even afford to use, from a climate perspective, the oil known reserves, right? So this question of oil expansion into Yasuni and further in other areas of Ecuador's Amazon is all in search of new oil that we know that we can't afford to burn, standing forests that are critical for climate change mitigation. So it's a double whammy for the planet.
The Ecuadorian government says, listen, we are a poor country. We're a country in debt. We need to find some type of revenues, and we're going to find it in our backyard. What do you say to that?
I say that they're trying to use their poison as the cure. Most of their debt is actually incurred because of oil production and because the way that oil contracts have been, negotiated so that most of the profit and benefit is flowing out of the country. And when you try to use the same system that has indebted you to get you out of debt, I think you're really pulling the wool over your eyes.
Ecuador is now the #1 source of foreign oil for California. This is a country that's about the size of Nevada, and they are exporting more crude to California than Saudi Arabia. I think it can't be underestimated how much and the important role that Ecuador is playing as a crude source for California and the impact that ends up having on the people in the forest.
Back inside Yasuni, Nemo believes there's still hope.
There is hope because the women of the rainforest are rising up and fighting these injustices. We will protect our rainforest. We are calling upon world leaders to help defend our people and our lands. The rainforest is for everyone. We will keep fighting. We will never stop. If I die, my children will continue the fight.
Time, though, is running out. Reports commissioned by the government of Ecuador reveal that more than half of the forest cover in the region could be lost by 2030.
What I would say to the people who are consuming this oil is that if we don't stop to think about where this oil comes from and what is happening to the people in those communities, then we will all be affected. we will all suffer.
The Ecuadorian embassy in Washington did not respond to our request for comment. We also reached out to all the companies mentioned in our report. Only Delta Airlines responded back, saying they are working to transition away from jet fuel to sustainable aviation fuel with the short-term goal of 10% of our fuel supply by 2030. The California EPA also got back to us. They sent us this statement saying, in part, we cannot sacrifice the habitability of our planet for the survival of vulnerable indigenous communities for a dying industry. This report illustrates exactly why California must eliminate dependence on fossil fuels, whether they come from critical regions like the Amazon or next to homes and schools right here in the state. This is a story we will definitely stay on top of. Coming up, China hits back. The response from the communist superpower after the Women's Tennis Association boldly suspended them over safety concerns for a Chinese tennis player. Stay with us. Back now with China versus the Women's Tennis Association, the organization suspending the country from all tournaments over safety concerns for a Chinese tennis star. Many calling it courageous, but tonight China is firing back. Janice Mackey-Freyer reports from Shanghai.
Tonight, citing fears over the safety of Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai, a dramatic move by the Women's Tennis Association, suspending its tournaments in China.
This is about what's right for women, especially around the issues of sexual assault.
Tennis star Novak Djokovic praising the WTA's decision as bold and courageous.
We, as a tennis community, need to stand together, and so I support it.
As the International Olympic Committee revealed, they had a second video call with Peng just yesterday, saying they're using quiet diplomacy with China. For weeks, Peng has been out of public view since a letter was posted to her social media account accusing a former Chinese Communist Party official of sexual assault, Serena Williams among those who demanded an investigation. The Grand Slam doubles champion then reappeared in videos linked to state media Twitter accounts, where she is seen but not heard. Chinese officials tonight hitting back, criticizing the WTA for politicizing sports. WTA players have plenty to lose. The prize money from the past 9 tournaments totaled more than $30 million.
I hope that the Chinese authorities will do the right thing.
All right, Janice joins us now from China. And Janice, we heard there in your piece that athletes like Serena Williams are demanding an investigation. But how is this being handled in China?
Well, there is no investigation, and there isn't really even official acknowledgement of the controversy. What we're seeing is any information purportedly coming from Peng Shuai is being distributed through select Twitter accounts that are tied to state media employees, like this latest alleged third email from Peng to the WTA, where she purportedly expresses shock at the WTA's decision. Again, it all comes down to the credibility of the information that's being exchanged. There are so many questions around her well-being, around her ability to express that, and of course the opportunity to have her allegations be taken seriously and fully investigated.
You know, Janice, I want to talk to you about what tennis star Novak Djokovic said. He called the WTA's decision bold and courageous. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of professional sports teams and leagues cave to China. You've been covering China for a long time. Can you ever recall a sports organization standing up to them like the WTA is?
This is unique, and it's why the WTA seems to be garnering a lot of support for the decisions that it's making, the stance that it took early on, and the warnings that it's followed through on. China is, of course, a very lucrative market for professional sports, but it's also a very complicated one. Soccer players, basketball players, certainly getting a taste of that. The NBA a few years ago had huge problems here, an effective boycott over comments made by a manager over Hong Kong, and then how the league handled the fallout with China. I think that's the main difference this time, Tom, is that unlike with the NBA, there isn't the huge outcry on Chinese social media. There's certainly the anger here toward the WTA for criticizing China, but we aren't seeing that amplified, because talking about the criticism that the WTA has leveled would mean talking about the reason why there's controversy in the first place, these allegations against a former senior Communist Party official. And that, of course, is a hugely sensitive topic here.
Janice Mackey-Freyer for us tonight. When we come back, miraculous recovery, the mother battling COVID-19 in the hospital for months, even delivering a baby while intubated. And tonight, the emotional moment she got to go home for the first time in 100 days. Stay with us. We're back now with a touching update to a story you saw on this broadcast. An Indiana mother fighting for her life against COVID held her newborn son in the hospital for the very first time. That mother now on her way home. For Autumn and Zach Carver, it's been a long, hard battle with COVID.
Definitely the hardest and toughest thing that I've ever done in my life, hands down.
Autumn was hospitalized with COVID 100 days ago while she was pregnant with the couple's third child. That baby, Huxley, was born healthy, but his mother would remain intubated. It would be more than 50 days before mother and son were reunited. An emotional moment we showed you right on this broadcast. But now a moment the family will never forget, and a reason for that mom to smile.
And it was a very special memory that I'll never forget, handing him for the first time to Autumn, who's laying in a bed fighting for her life, and we both hugged him and kissed him and looked at each other's eyes. And
Autumn now sharing what that moment was like for her.
There aren't words for how great it was. It was amazing. I didn't feel really great that day, so the visit wasn't very long, but it was definitely meaningful.
But even after that day, her doctors in Indiana felt they were running out of options.
They felt that she was at the end of the road. There was nothing further that could have been done.
Autumn was transferred to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, a candidate for a lung transplant. Dr. Ankit Bharat is Northwestern's chief of thoracic surgery.
We recognized that she could benefit from some additional interventions with the intent of helping her lungs to get better.
And after a few days of treatment at Northwestern, progress.
A few days after we started those, she demonstrated signs of lung recovery. So we put the transplant on pause and we said, well, let's continue to support her and see what happens.
What kept Autumn going through this long battle? Her family, especially her husband.
So many people would have given up based on what he was told every day for so long, but he never did, never lost the positivity.
With that positivity, her recovery sped up. Autumn walking out of Northwestern Hospital yesterday, headed home to her family and her 3 kids for the first time in 100 days. And we are so happy the Carvers are back together and, most importantly, healthy tonight. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.